Kuna wengine wanasema ati kura ya mlima itagawanywa. Mheshimiwa Anne Waiguru, Mheshimiwa Rigathi Gachagua, Mheshimiwa Ishung'wa, Mheshimiwa Gavana Muthomi Njuki, Mheshimiwa Senator Linturi, Mheshimiwa Wamatangi, Mheshimiwa Maua, Mheshimiwa Alice Wahome, Mheshimiwa Faith Gitau. Sisi ndio tulikuwa tunashidia Uhuru kura na sisi ndio tulikuwa tunamwibia kura. Akili yote iliweka Uhuru kwa kiti iko hapa. Ile iko Azimio ni mwili peke yake.
So, kuibia kura or kuimbia kura? I don't understand what kuimbia kura would be. You'd be what, singing for the votes?
Yeah.
But here we are again with these claims of rigging, Jamila, surely.
Yeah, it's the season of kusetiana, Yvonne.
Yeah.
You know, the way politics is, sisi marafiki leo, kesho, we are not friends. And unamwaga mtama na mwaga unga, unamwaga mtama na mwaga unga. So this is basically telling you that hapa hii divorce imesha happen and it's final na tumeachana ka tumeanza kumwaga unga. And that's what we were seeing at the UDA NDC on Tuesday. Because when Moses Kuria said that, in fact, I think IEBC says they're going to question him over those claims.
Yeah.
Because remember, Raila Odinga, where he was in 2013 and 2017, had raised the issue and claimed that the elections had been rigged. I remember in 2017, there was even the ruling that nullified the presidential elections. And then now these claims by
Moses Kuria. The server that was never opened. Yeah, because people were asleep and on different time zones.
There are all those reasons that were given back then. But now, because they're on the other side, all this is coming out. The fact that there are questions there. And this issue about voter rigging and all that has become a campaign issue in the past few days. William Ruto spoke about it at the Chatham House. Raila Odinga spoke about it too today during the campaigns. It was an issue.
Don't forget Sabina Chege.
Sabina Chege also, when she spoke about it also, and of course, the Azimio side was saying she was speaking in jest, she was not serious. But the matter did come up. And during the Kwanza Kenya campaigns, I think today and even yesterday, Raila Odinga, when he was speaking, I think in Chatham House, he said that he would accept the results if they were free and fair. And that issue of if, that did come up today. William Ruto spoke about it. I've just seen a statement from the UDA Secretariat, Kenya Kwanza, talking about that if that Raila Odinga spoke about. So this issue of whether the vote will be fair, whether there'll be any voter, there'll be rigging, whether there'll be cheating in the elections is a big deal. And it's become a campaign issue, yes. But what does that say to IEBC? The fact that this is a matter that is in the public domain. There are claims about previous elections. People are expecting that when they vote, that their votes will be counted and the ultimate will only be the fair winner, the one who has won it legitimately. But this really raises the bar for IEBC in terms of how it will conduct the general elections. This is, I think, one of the most competitive one. I think the stakes are higher than you've seen in a long time.
Yeah, and I found it interesting, the contradiction, because when Deputy President William Ruto was out of the country, he really did talk about, the fact that, everybody needs to be more alert, that there could be, a plot to rig afoot. But then we hear that all of those who rigged before are now in his camp and so would be able to do that. So it seemed, very interesting. This whole rigging claim, kuiba, kuimbia, doesn't it remind you of when who was it who said weka taya? And it was still
Ndolo.
during an election.
It was Ndolo. It was
and then he said, no, niliposema weka taya, nilisema weka taya gari iende. I mean, there's some interesting things that come up there. But listen, Francis, there was some, awkward moments for one. So one, we saw, Farouk Kibet, the deputy president's, what do we call him?
I would say aide.
Aide, okay. Really moving up and down on the stage. And, in fact, he was trending on social media. But then there was also media being kicked out for a moment. And there was lots of speculation, was this the media, giving a blackout to this? What really happened when the media wasn't allowed in? What was going on?
I think it was an apprehension that was largely not necessary. Let me put it that way. Because the reason why the media was asked to step out was to allow the UDA delegates to do some in-house kind of a session. I'll put it this way. There were two meetings in one, the NDC and the NGC, and you've done a great job explaining how those party organs work. You see, for the Jubilee NDC and for the ODM NDC, there were 2 days. The first day, an NGC was held, and the resolutions of the NGC were brought to the NDC the following day. The same thing happened for Jubilee. But for UDA, they decided to do the 2 meetings in one day.
So why shut the media out?
The fear then was that there may arise some technicalities in terms of implementation or compliance with the political party's law, that members of the NDC who were seated there participated in the resolutions of NGC, which they are not members of, and that anyone could go to court and raise issues that the decisions that were approved by NGC were also approved by members who are not particularly in that committee per se. When the cameras were withdrawn, quite a number of us got into that meeting. And surprise, surprise, Yvonne, nothing happened, nothing basically. It was one, endorsing William Ruto as the UDA presidential candidate. A proposer, a seconder. Number two, having him as the party leader. A proposer, a seconder. Number three, changes to the party constitution, increasing the number of members of the disciplinary or dispute resolution committee from 7 to 9. A proposer, a seconder. Nothing major. So I would think the decision to kick the media out was totally unwarranted, and it ended up raising
a lot more
attention than would have been. In any case, I would think it this way: the same small team of NGC could have as well been accommodated in some room downstairs, in a holding room,
finished up their matter,
finish their business, bring the resolutions, while at it maybe have some entertainment going on. So the organizers of the meeting triggered an unnecessary kind of attention that was totally unwarranted. And
that attention, you know, was drawn from everywhere, including from, you know, the Azimio side. I think we saw a statement from
Professor Makau Mutua,
who's the spokesperson there. But, you know, maybe that's where we should go back to, because this is the NDC edition. And on Saturday, you actually attended both NDCs. At this point, I think now you are a chief organizer. You probably understand how to do this very well. But it was at that NDC where there was also, you know, a major pronouncement that was made. Let's listen to President Uhuru Kenyatta, who, I mean, literally looked like master of ceremonies for this one, chief campaigner, if you like. And here he is, akitangaza captain mpya.
Leo tuko hapa kumtangaza team captain wetu, na tumemtangaza. Sini namna hiyo ya kwamba hatuna any doubt that we have a team leader. We have a team leader in the name of Raila Amolo Odinga.
Interesting, you know, what happened there at KICC, and then, of course, you know, what happened then at the Jacaranda grounds. Linus, we saw maybe a rather different Uhuru Kenyatta. I mean, I remember when, you know, he said, wakati wa siasa sasa umekuja na sasa utatusikia. And boy, did we hear him at this NDC. He was front and center. There was lots of protocol breaches. I mean, you know, he spoke, and then, you know, he invited Raila Odinga to then come on stage and speak. And we saw the same thing happening at Jacaranda. But this was, you know, a rather different mood from what we saw on Tuesday, which was, you know, filled with a lot of lamentation and perhaps, you know, anger in that space. And then here it's different. And Uhuru Kenyatta is there as the chief campaigner, his MC, is inviting people on stage. A rather different Uhuru Kenyatta here, and a different mood.
A very different Uhuru Kenyatta. And the one statement that is really making here is, this is not a drill, it's real. I'm doing this. I am supporting Raila Odinga to be the next president, to be my successor. Remember this handshake and the political cooperation between Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta, a lot of doubt attended to that because of our history as a country and because of what even William Ruto is going on right now. It's possible for politicians to turn against each other. And one of the main projections for a very long time was that Uhuru Kenyatta is taking Raila Odinga for a ride and then dump him at some point and then roll out a succession plan that could be still within Jubilee and probably in favor of William Ruto. And here now he says, no, this is the real thing. He's pushing for Raila Odinga to be the next president. And I just want us to listen to number 10 right there in Robert's list, because I think he speaks a bit more as to why he's doing this.
Tumesema ya kwamba tunataka candidate ambaye atasimama uchaguzi na kugombania kiti ya urais mwezi wa August, na kwa kauli moja tumeamua ya kwamba huyo si mwingine isipokuwa Raila Amolo Odinga.
This was the president in Jacaranda grounds, again stating very clearly his position on the succession plan, that he wants Raila Odinga to be the next president. And there has been a lot of debate, first on the issue of why should he be actively participating in his own succession. The opposition, do I call them that now? That is the UDA, Kenya Kwanza, say no, President, stay off the stage and don't participate. But Uhuru Kenyatta actually has done what all the 4 presidents have done. And I think I would only acquit, because there's nothing in history that proves what Mzee Jomo Kenyatta's preference, real preference was, but he showed his hand on who it's not. It
wasn't.
It wasn't Jaramogi Oginga Odinga. He kicked him out and made sure he's as far from power as possible. But when you look at Daniel Arap Moi, basically he went out and fished out Uhuru Kenyatta from political obscurity. He wasn't a politician. He was chairman of Kenya Tourism Board, KTB, and made him a candidate, nominated him to parliament and make him a candidate. Moi was very hands-on, and you remember he worked exactly as hard as Uhuru is working right now for Raila. There is this notion, very misleading notion, that Mwai Kibaki did not influence his succession. Mwai Kibaki influenced his succession, only in a different way. Why was Uhuru Kenyatta appointed deputy prime minister and not Martha Karua, who was actually the lead negotiator of the Amani talks? Yes, because there was a game plan. Uhuru Kenyatta was also propped up for this position by Mwai Kibaki. Only that he did it quietly, and he did it in a much, you can call it a smarter way. Did Uhuru Kenyatta have the option of doing it quietly? I don't think he did have an option of doing this quietly. Why not? Because of the kind of political environment that exists right now. The negotiations, for example, how do you hide that? You have to keep calling all these guys, come to State House. Mudavadi, I think, was there. Wetangula was there. There was a whole team that had to go there because he had to show his preference. You can't do this behind the scenes. And just the last illustrations. Presidents, by nature, are very interested in who succeeds them. Remember, the presidency is a very small job group that has only had 4 occupants so far in this country. This is only the 4th in about nearly 60 years. So it is a special place. It is indeed special. You can't take it as an ordinary job. And they are very interested in who takes over because it's an office that comes with enormous powers. And when you see a president going wild like this in support of an opposition candidate, it is because there is something he's saying about his deputy. And what he's saying is not very nice. In 1995 in Tanzania, retired President Julius Nyerere had to come back to Dar es Salaam. Remember, he had retired and gone to his home in Butiama near Musoma. And he said, siwezi kwenda Butiama kukaa niache nchi itwaliwe na mbwa.
Oh, wow.
Yes, it was that harsh.
Yeah.
Because all the figures, all the numbers were really showing that Augustine Mrema of NCCR Mageuzi was going to floor the CCM candidate who was Benjamin William Mkapa. He came back and basically took charge of the campaign. In fact, he took charge of the ruling party nomination process because it was so divided. A young Jakaya Kikwete was beating Mkapa in the delegates conference in Dodoma, and Mzee Nyerere said, no, you wait, your time will come. And indeed his time came, and Mkapa was president for 10 years, and then he was succeeded by Jakaya Kikwete. I was present when Jakaya Kikwete was winning the nomination in Dodoma, and he said, Kura zimetosha. Basically, presidential interference in succession is there. And when you look at other countries, whether you're talking of democracies like the US, Barack Obama was campaigning for
Hillary Clinton.
Hillary Clinton.
Right, yeah.
And was campaigning for Biden as well.
Right.
Because there is an interest. Because if you step back, you may see a candidate whose values you do not like can actually win. Like Nyerere was concerned. And I think these are the concerns that Uhuru Kenyatta has. We hope one day he'll actually open up. He tried a bit of that in Sagana the other day. Tell us why.
Yeah.
And in formal jobs, that is the 8 to 5 jobs, for which we don't really have much of a history for Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto. I don't know where they worked before they went to politics, whether they ever held 8 to 5 jobs. But recommendations, there is something called a recommendation letter.
Yeah.
There is also something called a referee. Now, if William Ruto was to be asked for a referee,
he's not going to get it from Uhuru.
Yes, and that is a very, very bad place to be.
I think, Yvonne, on the same note, he spoke about Sagana 3. And I remember the president saying that saizi Ruto hafai kuongoza, pengine baadaye. And he has gone out of his way to clearly show that for him, his deputy president is not fit to lead right now. You talked about what was happening at Jacaranda, him being the MC, him talking about arriving before Raila and introducing him, and talking about the negotiations that had happened that morning with Kalonzo Musyoka. And he mentioned it several times. Yeah. He mentioned it at the earlier meeting, and he also mentioned it at Jacaranda, talking about kuna wale ambao tunawashukuru wamewacha tamaa yao ili kuunga mkono Raila Odinga. So, and he spoke about it, and we'll talk about Kalonzo Musyoka in a bit. But after that day, the next day, William Ruto went to Thika, and he spoke quite a bit about how he felt betrayed by the president, Teswa, and all that.
Tunamwachia
Mungu and all that. And we were talking about this with Linus a few days ago, in that this is it, like the split is real. Nivo, it's not longer a drill, and he mentioned it. And going there na kusema hivyo ni kama umeenda nyumbani kulalamika. Like nyinyi watu ni mashahidi wangu kwamba nilimuunga mkono lakini sasa amenifanya hivi. Mujue kwamba this is what happened. You are here as my witnesses. And his conduct and the way he presented himself in Jacaranda on Saturday was clearly him saying, nimejitokeza, niko hapa, na huyu hafai, na huyu mwingine ndiye anayefaa.
Let's talk about Kalonzo, because I remember, and it wasn't just with us here, but it was the breaking news everywhere that, Kalonzo asema Raila tosha. That was the big one of the day. But before we talk about that, did anybody notice just how many times, Kalonzo was mentioned? And it sort of said something. Uhuru, in his statement, like Jamila says, said, na huyu ameacha tamaa yake. He said it several times. Raila also saying the same thing. So let's have Raila talking about Ndugu Kalonzo. And I believe we have another one as well. Yeah, let's listen to that first.
Kalonzo saying kwa roho safi.
Yes.
Kwa roho safi. Kwa roho safi, Wakenya nasema Raila Odinga tosha mara ya 3. Kuja hapa ndugu yangu. Ndugu Raila Odinga, tumetoka mbali. Tumekula tear gas mbali. Tumetoka mbali. Sisi tulianza kule LDP.
At some point, by the way, you know, the crowd was getting a little restless with him when he started to say, unajua mimi nilikuwa nasema, you know, aniachie, lakini, and the crowd was like, you know what, no. But this man, Kalonzo, and then what did we see happen, you know, a day after? He said he is not sure what he signed, or it wasn't signed by all secretaries general, including the one of Wiper. But Francis, this man, Kalonzo, this meeting was meant to begin at 9 a.m.
Yes.
at KICC.
Let me tell you.
And it didn't because... because why?
I've covered quite a number of significant political events, but I think Saturday was quite significant. We did interviews, links, quite a number of them, heavily from 9 a.m. to about 2:35 p.m. when the president arrived. Raila Odinga arrived, and then the people who were outside there, when they saw Kalonzo come in, you could see some relief. You know, away from the links, away from the cameras, I did a bit of walking up and down, and I could tell the anxiety. Some political leaders whose names I will not mention here were constantly on phone. I could see a lot of consultation. I could see some getting very agitated. Even some saying, kujeni tu tuanze hii kitu, you know, without him. Similar to what we heard Nick Salat say? Yeah. Let's go. You know, let's proceed. At one point, we even hear stories like, there's a proposal to call off the event, and then there were arguments like, there are people already here. How do you tell them that the event has been called off? And people waiting at Jacaranda as well. And people waiting at Jacaranda. Yeah. So it was quite a heavy day. Why? Because there were negotiations that were going on at Karen, at Serena, and eventually at State House. And for about 6 hours or so, a lot of things were happening. And actually the discussions began on Wednesday, before the event on Saturday. Quite a number of issues back and forth, demands, counter demands, you know, structural issues in the coalition. Quite a number of demands were being made. And of course, at the center of it was Kalonzo Musyoka, the Wiper party leader. Why? Because he was coming into this discussion as a presidential contender endorsed by his party. And here is Raila Odinga, also endorsed by his party, ODM, as a presidential contender. And you listen to what Kalonzo and team were saying during the signing of the cooperation coalition agreement at Kempinski for One Kenya Alliance. Yep. And there they argued that we don't want predetermined decisions, predetermined outcomes. That everything will be on the table. Yeah. So that one of those predetermined decisions was the candidature of Raila Odinga as the Azimio la Umoja presidential contender. Listening to quite a number of people that I interviewed there, Sifuna, the Secretary General of ODM, quite a number of MPs, leaders, they were with that position, affirmatively so, that the presidential contender would be Raila Odinga. Actually, they were not leaving any room for dialogue or negotiation. So that was one of the issues. On one hand, obviously, Kalonzo would make certain demands. I mean, you're going into a coalition, and you don't want a scenario where you go there and get played, quote unquote. He had complained previously that he had been shortchanged. So you also want to go into this kind of an arrangement with your eyes open, with your ears open. Try and squeeze as much as you can into what you get eventually. Even at the very last minute. Even at the very last minute. And I also think it was also a realization on the part of the Wiper leader of probably the value that he was bringing to the table. I mean, this is a race where every vote will count. And so if you come from a region that has a sizable number of votes, about 1.7 million registered voters in the 3 counties of Ukambani, where the Wiper leader has some considerable weight politically, and not forgetting, because unfortunately the ethnic factor in Kenyan politics, you cannot do away with it. There are quite a number of residents from the region who are also in the diaspora. Put it at probably 500 to about another 1 million. So you're talking about a candidate or a political leader who can easily talk about 2 million votes, because that question of what do you bring to the table always comes in. So I think he had realized his worth, and there were quite a number of people also behind the scenes who are who are telling him, by this is your value, demand as much as you can. But on the other hand, there were 3 governors who had already teamed up with Raila Odinga, Charity Ngilu, Kivutha Kibwana, and Dr. Alfred Mutua. And in those meetings, Ngilu was there. And so she was also having her own push. And you remember their history, Kalonzo, Ngilu. Theirs is not a very rosy kind of a political situation. So you would also see her hand in it. So it was quite a heavy scenario. And President Uhuru Kenyatta had a huge role to play. And that's why even Kalonzo himself acknowledged the role that the president played, and so did Raila Odinga. Now, the discussions at KICC, I would say there are quite a number of pending issues, even though there was that long wait for about 6 hours. There are quite a number of pending issues. One of them is the running mate question. The second question is the share of government. And because on the running mate issue, remember there has been this jostling around the position of the running mate. And they often talk about the position going to the Mount Kenya region. So to quite a number of people who are at KICC, they were saying the second in command slot is already taken care of. So you handle the presidential ticket. If you don't get it, fall back in line. Fall back in line, because the number 2 is already taken. So you will see a scenario where maybe an executive order, both ends, by the way, both for Kenya Kwanza and for Azimio, an executive order as soon as whichever team forms government, so an executive order will be number one of 2022 will be the creation, most likely, the creation of a chief minister to take care of the interest therein. And did you hear Kalonzo talk about a 3-legged stool?
Yes.
That 3-legged stool is Raila Odinga, Kalonzo Musyoka, and Raila Odinga.
Raila Odinga mbili.
Raila Odinga, Kalonzo Musyoka, Uhuru Kenyatta.
Okay.
The 3-legged stool.
Gashuri has actually touched on what you talk about the value of Kalonzo Musyoka. You know, when you look at elections, you look at, as a contender, you look at your safe zones, areas where kura iko kibindoni ni yako. And you look at the weak ones, the ones which will go to your opponent. And then you look at the battleground, those that can go either way. And I think if Kalonzo Musyoka had not joined Azimio, maybe Ukambani may have become a battleground. Gashuri has spoken about the number of votes from that region, and despite Azimio having the 3 governors from the region with them, that would not be enough to secure the whole Ukambani region, because Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka is a big prize. He's valued as a leader in that region. You may say what you want to say about him huko nje, but back home, he's their leader and they trust him and respect him. I think he's the Ukambani kingpin since the days of Mulu Mutisia, who actually really favored Kalonzo Musyoka, and he's respected that way. So you can say whatever you want to say, his votes are important. But I want to talk about what happened the day after when Kalonzo Musyoka was in Seikuru. And he talked about how they didn't even know what they had signed, and that lawyers need to look at it again, that it was rushed. And then a short while later, he attends a campaign meeting and akampigia debe Raila Odinga na Azimio la moja akisema huyo achaguliwe. What does this say? It confuses, I think, those who support him. It confuses them in terms of where do we stand? Are we supporting Azimio or are we not? What was signed? What was not signed? So that clarity, I think, is very important in terms of those who support them and in terms of the perception out there. Because I think there was also a statement released today by Oka about how the nomination process will be, because that's another headache that's going to face both sides, both the Kenya Kwanza and Azimio, in terms of the smaller parties wanting to be able to field candidates. I think Dr. Alfred Mutua's party has already said they're going to be giving direct nominations because that will probably be replicated by other smaller parties because they want to feel that they're part of these coalitions. I think that's what we need to look at in terms of what Kalonzo Musyoka means. He is important. His almost 2 million votes are very important for both sides. But the fact that he's confusing not just us, but also those who support him, I think it's a big deal.
But he does blow hot and cold, including today, where he's reported to have said, you know, to Wiper voters or supporters that, let's make sure we vote in as many Wiper MPs as possible so that we have the numbers to impeach Raila Odinga should he renege on, the commitment and the agreement that we've signed. So, I mean, the trust still isn't there. I mean, before we come to you, Linus, in fact, it took the president, we know he actually midwifed this agreement. And let's listen to him, just saying that, Raila will not leave those behind and, just sort of assuring the people that whatever agreement was signed, wherever it was, State House or Serena or the day before, I mean, moments before they got to KICC, that will hold. Uhuru akisema wakati atashika usukani hawataacha ndugu zake nyuma.
Na haki ya kwamba wakati atashika usukani hatawacha ndugu na dada zake nyuma. Wakati serikali itaundwa, tutasikia Kalonzo Musyoka, tutasikia Gideon, tutasikia Charity Ngilu, tutasikia nani na nani.
Yeah, the president literally midwifing, this process and making a very public assurance. Could it also be the fear that maybe Kalonzo would issue another personal statement the day before? Ni kama walikuwa wanamfunga everybody who mentioned him and said, yes, you're in, yes, don't worry, we'll sort you, yes. Like, his name came up quite a bit.
I think the president must have found himself in a rather awkward position. Because you're saying he midwifed this process, and yes, he did. But again, 2 days later, Kalonzo is displaying labor pain signs. And it becomes a bit strange that, okay, I thought we passed that.
Yeah.
I thought we have a deal. And for Raila Odinga, I think he must be trying to answer the question now of which between walking to Seikuru and climbing Mount Kenya is easier. Because really, the negotiations with Kalonzo Musyoka have been punishing. And Francis, I think you had mentioned at some point that there was a walkout, basically, because those hours were very, very many. And what we are seeing with Kalonzo Musyoka is he's still raising questions relating to trust, like, don't shortchange me when we cross this. But the question again is, why this scramble for Kalonzo? Why was this so important? It's so important because since independence, basically, our elections have been decided by regions, ethnic blocks. We vote alongside community aspirations around community blocks and tribal alliances. That is our reality, and all the candidates in this race, all the aspirants do know, and especially Raila Odinga and William Ruto, they do know very well that in 2007, they were the first ones, actually the second, for the second time, they crafted a body that basically had regional tentacles to it. It was called the Pentagon, I think, in 2007.
Yes. Yeah.
Pentagon.
Charity Ngilu.
Yeah, there's Charity Ngilu, William Ruto, Raila Odinga, Najib Balala, and Nyaga.
Yeah.
In 2002, there was the summit. The summit of Mwai Kibaki, Raila Odinga, Michael Omalo Kijana, there was Charity Ngilu, and Kipruto Arap Kirwa.
Yes.
Basically, and Mudia Wari?
Yes.
Mudia Wari in there as well. Because voters want to see themselves in the high table. They want to see who is representing us as there. And there is always a second layer there. After the big summit, then there is a second layer, which you see in form of the governors that both sides have really gone out to try and assemble. Go to Safari Park, showcase the number of Mount Kenya governors that you have. Go to Kisii, go to Coast, and parade who you have, because we are a country structured that way. I see a lot of theories in analysis right now, and I'm saying, can you just wait for August and see how we will vote very normally? Normally, just the Kenyan way. It'll be a typical Kenyan election decided on the strength of ethnic blocks, and ethnic alliances.
Yeah.
By they're talking about summit and everything else. In the Azimio team, there is what they're calling the Coalition Council. The Coalition Council that will be chaired by the president, that has Raila Odinga as the coalition party leader, has other leaders like Alonzo, like Gideon Moi, like Ngilu. Same format. Actually, what changes are the names and the times, but the principle remains the same. But be it as it may, you will see the next scenario that you will see, other than the choice of a running mate and the structure of government, the next question will be the format of nominations. And that explains that question you are raising about Kalonzo, asking the Wiper members to elect as many MPs as possible.
Yeah.
I mean, you see, the coalition has to come up with nominations. And the same principle will apply to all coalitions. Because in some areas, if it is a constellation of political parties, you have a political party laying claim to a certain region. Say, this is our stronghold. This is where we are likely to get numbers. So does the coalition ticket go to that party in that particular region where it feels is its stronghold? And then also picture this, Yvonne. The law that was passed by Parliament in a very contentious manner, the Political Parties Amendment Act, says if you form a coalition political party, the political parties that constitute that coalition political party do not die. It's not a merger.
Yeah.
It's not like what we saw for Jubilee in 2017,
yes,
where about 14 political parties wound up and joined Jubilee. You're saying this is a house where every political party has its own room, but you're in the same compound, same structure, so to say. So in each of those political parties, they would want to come with something.
Yes.
That something is parliamentary numbers, is county assembly numbers, is your numbers in the Council of Governors. So you will see a scenario where the Wiper team will be told, get as many MPs as you can, such that in the event there is a dispute in that coalition political party, you can use your numbers to wield the stick against the president in Parliament. And remember, we're still in a presidential system of administration where Parliament has a significant role to play in the day-to-day management and running of a government. I mean, this is where bills are passed. This is where the budget is passed. This is where all appointees must be approved for the executive. So if you have a scenario where there is a fallout in a coalition, the constituent members of a coalition political party can use their numbers to whip the president if he does not or she does not comply with what was agreed on. Yeah. So you will see a lot of that kind of a discussion in terms of who feels where in terms of the parliamentary strength.
Right, and who has the numbers. And in fact, when you talk about that, the next thing that is coming up, in fact, exactly a month from today is the nominations, which begin April 16th right through to the 21st. And that's where Kinyang'anyiro, I like to say that's sort of the halfway point between now and August the 9th. So that's definitely going to be something interesting.
One more small thing. Remember the law, coalition making. You must conclude this process 120 days to the general election.
That's right.
That 120 days is coming up on or about 9th of April. So between now and 9th of April, you must get every nut and bolt right. Otherwise, you may find yourself boxed in a situation where you cannot be able to easily come out.
Yes.
You're out of time.
Yes.
So by 9th or thereabout, you must get everything that you wanted in that coalition. Otherwise, you will have very little room thereafter to say, nilicheswa, because that document will be a public document. Absolutely. So your ability to negotiate and get as much as you can from that coalition building, the better for you.
Now, and speaking of out of time, we are out of time, but not before we give you our final words. And because she is back, we give her the auspicious occasion to go first.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Nitaona nyuma ya tent baadaye.